during the session, please feel free to answer those poll questions. That would be helpful. So we can see a few participants joining in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on COVID-19 and lockdown times, how to adjust to the new normal. I am Dr. Ananya Choudhury, Senior Psychiatrist and Medical Officer in charge of PsyCare Hospital, Delhi. I would briefly introduce the topic and moderate the session. We at PsyCare have been organizing a series of webinars, and this is the second one. In the first webinar, Dr. Asif Iqbal Ahmed, the Chief Psychiatrist and founder PsyCare, outlined his views on the mental health impact of COVID-19 pandemic and the way ahead. Today's session would be an interactive webinar where post the panelists sharing their views, we will be open for your questions and comments. I therefore request all of you to post your questions in the chat box, and we will take them up at the end of the presentation. In case we are unable to answer all your questions, we would respond to all of the individual queries after the webinar. I would request all the panelists to kindly keep your microphone on mute and switch it on only while presenting. Now, coming back to the topic, COVID-19 and lockdown times, how to adjust to the new normal. Now, what is normal? For each one of us, normal may mean different things. Normal may mean going for a morning walk, sending the kids to school, waiting for the maid to come, going to office, sharing your lunch with your colleagues, meeting up with your friends after work, going out during the weekends, going out for lunch, going for a movie. Now, what is the new normal? With the spread of the COVID-19 and the lockdown, all things that we have considered normal has been curtailed. We have been exposed to a new set of circumstances for which none of us were prepared, leading to various challenges. In this context, I wanted to share a few data. A study in a hospital in Ludhiana found that there was a 25% to 30% increase in the number of anxiety patients that they had seen in a month. And there had been a 15 to 20% increase in the depression patients during the same month during the pandemic, indicating that during the lockdown, there has definitely been an increase in the psychological pressure on people. Now, moving on, the International Labour Organization, ILO, it mentions that due to the lockdown measures, 2.7 billion workers worldwide have been affected, which means 4 out of 5 of the global workforce. This indicates the ongoing financial issues that people are facing these days. Now, the UNICEF mentions that 3 billion people are on lockdown and almost 90% of the student population are cut off from school. Now, in our country, it means that most of the students have been confined to their homes. This has led to a new set of issues on how to engage their children meaningfully. Most schools have started online classes for their children, but this may not be feasible for children from the poorer sections of the society in our country. Now, if you pay close attention to the picture that you have on the screen, now it is from a newspaper which I could get, and this data is very disturbing. It actually indicates the number of complaints that were received by the National Commission for Women prior to the lockdown and during the lockdown. Prior to the lockdown, the National Commission of Women, in the month of February to March, it had received 396 complaints, which increased drastically to 587 in the month of March to April during the lockdown period. This clearly indicates that with the lockdown, there has been increased effects on women. And these may be due to multiple factors, which include increase in domestic violence, the cutoff from the support system, increased burden of the household chores, loss or disruption of their livelihood, restricted access to sexual and reproductive health, lack of access to crisis or protection centers, and restricted freedom. The NCW has noted a steep rise in crime against women, and as one of the measures, they have launched a special helpline number for the same. Now, all of this clearly indicates that all aspects of our life have been affected by the current situation. Now, if we move in a phase-wise manner onto the next slide. Now, the initial phase. Now, what the initial phase is, what it means is that when we initially came to know about the virus, the spread of the infection, during that phase, it was marked by apprehension, by fear, and by panic about contracting the infection, about how to protect oneself and how to protect one's family, fearful that you might have some indication of infection. Now, the lockdown brought in the next phase where we had to adjust to being confined and isolated. It brought with it various questions about how to maintain work-life balance, how to utilize the available time meaningfully, how to keep the children engaged, and how to manage their screen time. Then we moved on to the current stage. The current stage is marked by uncertainties about the future, like when is the situation going to change? When is the lockdown going to be over? What about my job? What about my finances? What does the future hold for me? Now, these are some of the issues that we are facing currently. Now, we have discussed the problem at length, so let's move on to the solution. I would now ask our first panelist, Dr. Ranveer Singh, senior psychologist, to give us a few tips on how to maintain work-life balance and how to manage anxiety and stresses in life.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ananya. Corona pandemic has changed the general outlook of our life altogether. Any change which is unplanned, sudden, is bound to trigger some anxiety, fear, stress, depression, standalone or in combination. I will be addressing today work-life balance and dealing with anxieties and stress. So let me take up work-life balance first. We should start by reflecting on how we want to manage our life and thus manage our time. This time can be broadly divided into three parts: personal, family, and work time. Managing your work. One of the biggest struggles is fitting it all in 24 hours. To make more time for hobbies, passion, relationship, it becomes crucial to allocate time wisely. Schedule recurring social activities like monthly book club, weekly dinners with friends, having regular activities written on your calendar have to be planned around them. Since I see that most of the people are working out of home, it becomes all the more tedious job to allocate the right time to the right function. You can put as much time to work as you want to and then miss on the other activities. And it goes vice versa. So my suggestion is join some online groups. These days, television has channels which provide exercise classes. So sign into some of them. Put a timetable. Surround yourself with work because it is surrounding yourself with work which keeps you constructively occupied. Be deliberate about taking time before work or after work, on your lunch breaks, to step out of your mental office. Making time for family. If you work from home, these days it becomes very difficult to understand when is the family time and when is the work time. Flexible hours enabled by technology can allow parents to perform well at their jobs and take care of the young children at the same time. Prioritizing your health, overall physical, emotional, mental should be a main concern. I especially recommend this if you struggle with anxiety and depression, that you must not miss on your medication and or your psychological therapy sessions. Do not forget to book them. Most of the hospitals are offering online consults. PsyCare also offers an online consult through its app. Cutting ties with the outside world from time to time allows us to recover from weekly stress and gives us space for our thoughts and ideas to emerge. Think of yourself staying at home as a de stressing time. Unplugging can mean something simple like practicing mindfulness, doing several activities with your children which you were earlier unable to do. Managing anxiety and stress. Since we know this, that in last 45 days, almost every educated human being on planet Earth has faced anxiety and stress in some sort or other. There are plenty of studies flooding up on this subject. Isolation and economic upheaval caused by coronavirus pandemic has risen and created a widespread of psychological and trauma. Longer periods of isolation has increased anxiety, helplessness, detachment, irritability, sleeplessness, and or depressive symptoms, standalone or in combination. We all know that stressors after quarantine are going to be mammoth. Financial losses, media is talking about them. Financial losses due to inability to work can lead to severe economic hardships and will have enduring psychological impact. In particular, anger, anxiety can persist for months after quarantine. Stigma is another factor which will persist after quarantine. We have already seen in the media that doctors were being targeted in India who were treating corona patients by their landlords. They were being evicted. We've seen that people who were quarantined due to corona positive test are scared to go back to their houses. Their neighbors are scared to associate with them. Such is the stigma that will arise out of corona situation. Management tips: how to manage your anxiety and stressors. Build a good routine. Do not let go of a timetable or an itinerary for yourself. Building a good routine goes a long way in helping ease some symptoms of depression and anxiety. It provides us a sense of control. Small activities, which may have seemed insignificant earlier, can be your savior now. Make your own bed. Prioritize daily tasks. Exercise for 30 to 45 minutes. We know this scientifically that any exercise 30 to 45 minutes daily is as good as having a pill for anxiety and depression, at least in the milder form. Inadequate sleep can also make symptoms worse. Try and take a good 7 to 8 hours sleep to regulate your sleeping patterns. Give importance to your likings. Watch movies. Try your hand at cooking, dancing, listening to music, gardening. board games, indoor games with family, things that you've been wanting to do. Explore your hobbies, interests since you have time on hand. Personal grooming and hygiene is a vital point not to be missed. Art therapy is very creative way to deal with anxiety. Performing of art such as painting, drawing, writing, mandala drawing. Very easy culturally enabled form of mandala art is drawing rangoli. We all know it. We just need to get back to it. Taking care of yourself, your friends, and your family can help you reduce stress. It helps build up communication. You know you are not alone. Take breaks from watching, reading, and listening to news. Limit your media time. It is very upsetting to watch news. All it is negative data. Maintain a balanced diet, meditate, avoid using alcohol and drugs, and deal with your emotions through effective communication. Talk to people you love, listen to their viewpoint. It will help you in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ranveer. I would request all the participants, there might be a poll showing up on your screen. Uh, Kindly feel free to participate in the poll. Moving on, I would like to now move on to another important part of our discussion. We'll move on to the next panelist, Ms. Namrata Upadhyay, who is a clinical psychologist. She is going to talk to us about children and how the parents can manage them well during the lockdown period.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya. Good evening, everyone. So managing screen time of children is one of the most common difficulty which most of the parents would have been facing. From a child's perspective, it's like a vacation time for school children, but they cannot go out and play. Parents are at home, but aren't free. They are either working from home or are busy doing household chores. Children get bored and throw tantrums. So what is the solution? Give them smartphone or turn on the TV and everything falls into the place? Well, no. So, so professionals across the globe are of the opinion that too much of screen time is not recommended as it leads to a lot of health related and behavioral issues like obesity, like irregular sleep schedules and shorter duration of sleep, behavioral problems, loss of social skills, violence, and maybe less time to play. So moving to the next slide, realistically speaking, we cannot just shun all the gadgets. We as parents must need to establish some rules at home regarding screen time. As per WHO recommendation, there should not be any screen time for infants below 1 year and less than 1 hour of screen time for those under 5 years. So here are several recommendations. So we as a parent must keep a tab on what and how long your children are watching. We must set up a screen time limit to restrict the uses. We have to ensure that our children are watching age appropriate content. We have to nudge our children to thought provoking, informative, and interactive shows and games that enhance their knowledge and stimulate creative thinking. It is essential for the children to be informed about the ill effect of too much screen time too. Like if they spend too much of time on phone, they may miss on another interesting activities. So moving on to the next slide, we can actually help them in developing new hobbies. Like we cannot just tell them that don't watch screen, don't spend too much time on TV. We just have to tell them that what they can use, how they can utilize their time. So we can actually help them in developing new hobbies like drawing, painting, craft work, maybe knitting. So we can also cultivate a habit of good reading. We can encourage playing indoor games like carom board, chess. These games help developing coordination, cognitive and decision-making skills. So moving to the next slide, we can also try them giving some of the age-appropriate tasks, like engaging them in household chores. We can teach them to prepare a few dishes. We can allow them to wash maybe vegetables, chop vegetables under supervision, making a ball from a dough. So giving them age-appropriate tasks will not only inculcate essential skills in them, but also teach them cleanliness, discipline. As a parent, we must appreciate them for every small task they complete. This will keep them motivated to do their next task. As far as physical activities and outdoor activities are concerned, to compensate for them, we have to engage them into another indoor activities, which includes a lot of coordination, physical movement like dancing, bending, stretching. Moving to the next slide, we must remember that children do what they see. We as a parent have to act as a model for them. We also have to restrict our screen time. What you will do will be reflected in your children's activity. So this lockdown period, we have to make best use of the time that we get to spend with them and make it as a memorable experience. So thank you, Dr. Ananya. Over to you.
Thank you, Namrata. We will now move on to the next issue that we're talking about. So far, we have talked about issues faced by healthy people. Now we are going to talk about what is the impact of the current situation on people who are already living with mental health issues. Now, Dr. Vikram Singh Panwar is going to address these issues, and he would also talk about how and when we should seek professional help.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya. Good evening, everybody. And I'm very sorry. I don't know why my video is not working. So it's a very important topic about when this COVID-19 pandemic started. We as medical fraternity were aware that it would be a significant symptoms burden on our existing patient population. Even if like past pandemics, natural disasters have been followed by an increase in general population experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression. So for those who already have mental health diagnosis, it was expected that their symptoms will increase. For instance, those with obsessive compulsive disorder may experience an increase in obsessive thoughts about cleanliness, compulsion to wash hands. Individuals with history of schizophrenia may experience an increase in symptoms of paranoia about how the pandemic started and they're feeling that they are being attacked or they are under the attack. And I gave you these two examples because in our institute, PsyCare, we have readmitted, I would say, a couple of patients who were stable with this diagnosis, but since COVID-19 started, they had worsening of their symptoms and all this. And if you see the next slide, some of the reasons around this increased hardship, and especially with COVID-19, there is a lot of financial stress, family stress, worry about health and deaths in family. Financial stress can lead to feeling like a failure, feeling of hopelessness, worthlessness, and all these are depressive symptoms. Living in confined spaces can also, in many cases, I should say some cases, can cause family discord. And family stress can create anxiety, paranoia, depression. Then there is worry about or experiencing COVID or having a death of family member. And this can also lead to worsening of anxiety and depression. And most important, like since we all are in houses, isolation from social support can also create or worsen depression. So what is the main reason behind this, if you see? It's fear of unknown, fear of lack of control. And these are universal fears in humanity and have been affirmed in many ways through past pandemics and natural disaster. And these fears can change the symptom severity for individuals with pre-existing mental health condition. If we go on the next slide, So recently, we as mental health providers have been facing this very important question that, hey, doctor, when should we seek help? And this question I don't get only from people who have history of mental health issues, but also from general public, their family members who have never dealt with anxiety, depression, or mood issues prior to coronavirus. So I'll just go briefly over some symptoms. Most important, I feel, is sleep. If you begin having difficulty with sleep or sleeping too much, this could be a cause of concern. In general, each individual needs at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and it should be restful. Even changes in appetite from the baseline, like if you are eating too much or too less, can be related to depression. Many people, especially with this lockdown, might be gaining weight with just being at home or not being able to exercise. But we know even natural weight gain can impact how we feel about our bodies, and it can affect our self-esteem. So if you notice that you are gaining weight and secondary to it, you are feeling depressed or overwhelmed, take guidance, ask your mental health providers or talk to them. Again, another important feature I feel is difficulty in concentration. Do you find yourself walking in a room and then saying, wait, what am I doing here? Or talking and then suddenly stopping and could not find the word. This all can be related to depression, anxiety, or manic symptoms. So it is important that you are evaluated to determine the case, and then physicians can help you with proper medicines. Again, very important indicator of depression is having low mood or crying spells. We all these days are going through spells where we feel depressed or feel down. But if you are feeling like this for some more than few days, and along with this, you feel worthless, hopeless, have self-harming thoughts, very important to seek mental health. Again, we find increase in symptoms of anxiety, including racing thoughts, feeling overwhelmed, worry, or having perseverative thoughts. Basically, by perseveration, I mean is that you feel your thought is stuck in your mind and you are just constantly thinking about it. So that indicates that there may be a worsening of anxiety or depression. And listen to your friends, family members, co-workers, or even yourself. And if you notice that it is too much to deal with, reach out for help. Some research has shown that during these types of stressful situations, it is not uncommon for psychotic symptoms to get worse, suspiciousness, paranoia, and it is all secondary to the new stressors we all are dealing with. Another area of mental health that has been on the rise since this pandemic is alcohol and substance use. And again, a good indicator for need of help, as I said before, is it impacting your ability to work, socialize, or take care of yourself? These days, we have multiple therapy, intervention, medication, additional resources which you can take help of and help yourself. We all, as health providers, are able and willing to help you and identify what's the best path and help you with it. Can you? So how do you access to care? So with changes in symptoms, it becomes more important to maintain a consistent follow-up with mental health providers. Medication management takes a central role during this time. Outpatient clinics can occur using telehealth. We at PsyCare have our own PsyCare app, which is very easy to download, and you can ask front desk, you can call our clinic, and the front desk will be more than happy to help you guys to download it and get connected to a counselor, a therapist, or a psychiatrist for any kind of guidance. Even we have inpatient care facilities available at PsyCare. Next slide, please. So as I said, like prescription changes or having your prescription fill is very important. You need to be in close contact with your clinic. Again, whether it's counselor, therapist or psychiatrist, talk to them and get help with that. We at PsyCare can arrange for pickup or delivery of your prescriptions. Next slide. So again, as we talked about, like when to seek help, like I briefly touched over these topics like sleep, appetite, concentration, and these are the symptoms to look for, and listen to your friends, family members, colleagues. And if they feel that you are different, ask for help. So this is the PsyCare app I was talking about. Like this is our app and very easy to download from App Store, Google Play, and it will tell you about general conditions. You can get connected to our team and medication door-to-door service, and there is a lot of surveys, research, webinars. It will keep you updated about. Next slide. So what all services we provide at PsyCare, like outpatient services like adult psychiatry, childhood disorder, dementia, Parkinson's, neurology testing, counseling, and also community services. So these are the services we have are at PsyCare. Thank you, Dr. Ananya.
So this is just a photo of our team, the team of psychiatrists and the team of psychologists. So now, thank you, Dr. Panwar. And now we will now take up all the questions that we have received during the session. People attending the webinar can still keep posting their questions, and we will try and take up as many questions as possible. And now going to the first question that we have received. So this is a question from, okay. I would like Dr. Ranveer to answer this question. How to identify increased stress levels? Is taking stress good or bad?
Quantity. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dr. Ranveer.
So like I was saying, stress can be broadly described or characterized into two parts, qualitative and quantitative. There is eustress and there is distress. So not all stress is bad. Eustress is the good part of the stress. It's a smaller example of it would be like you need to launch an arrow from a bow, so you need to pull the string. The stress that this string experiences at that time can be equated to the eustress that we experience. It is like the mild stress or anxiety a child will go through when going for exams, because it makes the child more aware, more serious, more responsible for the situation at hand. While we're talking of distress, the bad aspect of stress, it eventually leads to creating dysfunction in the thought process, in emotions, and if persists for a long period of time, it can be psychosomatic. That means it has the potential to cause dysfunction in the body as well. So taking stress, yes, to a limited kind of extent is good for health. Stress is ubiquitous. Nobody can escape stress on planet Earth. If you are working, if you are a part of the current world, then yes, you are bound to be experiencing stress somehow or the other. So one cannot escape stress. One needs to understand that one needs to find effective ways to deal with stress. Like I said earlier, you can exercise, you can make a schedule, you can be more effective with your time, you can eat healthy. All of these things will help you to remain in the eustress zone, not in the distress zone. And while you experience distress, that means a dysfunction is created, whether in the emotional area, whether in the thought area, or whether in the physical area. Then you need to take help of a qualified, experienced psychologist and or a clinical psychiatrist. Thank you, Dr. Ananya.
Okay, so I think this will answer quite a few questions which we have relating to stress. One is how to identify increased stress levels, and is taking stress good or bad. Then, can I manage the stress on my own, and when to seek professional help? And we move on to the next question now, which is, my son is age 15 years and has become very irritable and spoke of self-harm recently. Should I be concerned? So I would request Dr. Vikram to kindly address this issue. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, yes. So from the question, it looks like maybe there is some depression. And whenever it comes to self-harm, it's always good to seek professional help. Even to begin with, it can be from a psychologist, and if medicines are needed to deal with it, we can seek help with a psychiatrist. But I think it would be good to seek evaluation, especially when a 14-year-old child speaks about self-harm and feeling low. Hello?
Yeah. So when your 14-year-old child is talking about self-harm, I think what is important is to understand what he is going through. It may be issues relating to adolescence. It may be issues relating to adjusting in school. We have to be careful whether he's facing some kind of bullying. So what I would suggest is talk to your child, give him time, see if he can open up to you. If you still feel the situation is not good, take professional help. Now moving on to the next question which we have. This I would request Namrata to take up. I have a 14-year-old daughter who is getting irritated, bored, and not taking interest in anything. She doesn't come out of her room. Please suggest me how to handle this situation.
Right. So this is a very common situation. Like I have discussed in my talk as well, that for children, this is one of the most difficult phase of their time, which they are facing. They are not going out, they are not attending schools, and they are just homebound like all of us. So it's very important for us to have a conversation first, and if this is the thing that is actually worrying them, that they are just they are also dealing with this whole cut off from world thing, then we must be able to talk about about the reason why we are in a state of lockdown first. Then second, talking about what is actually troubling them. Third, helping them in maintaining a routine which is balanced, which includes some exercise, some indoor play, some study, and some screen time. And fourthly, and which is very important, that if you feel that irritability of mood, sadness, crankiness persist for let's say a week, 10 days, it's high time that you must consult a psychiatrist or psychologist and seek professional help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Namrata. Now we go on to the next question, which is, I am having trouble in kick-starting my routine to study, as I have to prepare for further entrance examination. So any of the panelists can answer this question. She has an exam to prepare for, but she's finding it difficult to getting into the mode of studying and preparing.
So I would like to answer, Dr. Nanya.
Yeah, Namrata, please go ahead.
So I think this is one situation with which most of us would have been facing or are facing. So one of the most important way to kickstart your day is that it may sound simple, but then you go to bed early and you wake up early. right? And then you can start with general healthy lifestyle, right? Having a glass of water, meditation, exercise. Another thing that may help you is having your to-do list of the day ready. If your day is planned, like a night before sleeping, if you're able to plan the to-do list for the next day, it actually helps you in remaining organized for the next day. Third thing is, you must know why you want to, what is the logic, what is the reason behind this examination, why you want to take this, how important is this examination for you. So this will actually keep you motivated. And fourth thing is little complex. Like, we also need to be little mindful about what is going inside our mind, right? Is there anything that is actually keeping me distracted? Are there a lot of thoughts? Am I stressing over things? So these are the things. If you are facing any of them, then probably you can connect with us and seek help. Thank you.
The other thing is also that when you are starting out preparation for any exam or any new thing, the initiation is always difficult because you feel that there is a huge mammoth task in front of you, and where do you start? It's like a mountain and you're at the bottom of it. What helps is to plan your study, and then instead of preparing to study 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, start with maybe 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. Take up simple things that you already know, and then move on to complex things. And once you feel that you have started moving, you'll move from first gear to second gear to fifth gear in no time. So let's see if, there are more questions, but I'll just pick a few because I think we have, just a few minutes left. Okay. So I'd ask Dr. Ranveer to answer this question: how to come out of low self-esteem?
You need to first identify the reason for why low self-esteem. Low self-esteem can be very common and quite debilitating. It can lead to a lot of illnesses, but first and foremost is to identify why is so low self-esteem, especially when somebody who has a low self-esteem perceives it that I have a low self-esteem. I think while working on low self-esteem, there are a lot of things you can do, like you can include some exercise, reading, meeting up with friends who are encouraging, and lastly but not the least, talking about it to somebody whom you think will be unbiased and unjudgeful. The best thing you can do in this case would be to seek help from a counselor or a clinical psychologist who can identify the reason for low self-esteem. Depression could be one reason, or vice versa. Low self-esteem could be leading to depression. So either which way, you need to work upon your own low self-esteem by keeping yourself in a regular routine, which must involve good diet, good lifestyle. Earlier, Ananya ma'am said that initiating anything is a little difficult. So if you find initiating a good routine is difficult for you, or talking to somebody is difficult for you, then kindly seek professional help. It will help you immensely. Low self-esteem is something you can get rid of very soon. Thank you, Dr. Ananya.
Okay, moving on to another question. Is physical exercise helpful? I would ask Dr. Panwar to answer that question.
Hello. Yeah. So, like, most of the questions are talking about, like, and especially this also, like, what should we do, especially in lockdown? So as Namrata pointed out, a scheduled physical activity or mental activity is very important. Yes, what physical activity does it lowers your anxiety, it lowers your stress, it helps you to cope with stress. So especially during this kind of period where we are locked down and we cannot go out, we can just go on terrace, we can go balcony, walk, and keep our mind off all the negative news and negative views about people, it will help with those endorphins released and help with what we call as happy hormones to release and reduce the stress. So physical activity, any kind, is important during this time.
Thank you, Dr. Panwar. There is another question. How do you prevent a situation from getting too stressful to manage? Now, I would conclude that what you mean by that question is, if you have a situation, how to manage it before it gets too stressful. I hope this is what you wanted to ask. So in that situation, usually, if you talk about stress at work or you talk about stress at home, usually what happens, if you talk about work area, what is important is usually there is work, and there is more work, and there is complicated work. So if you don't finish that work on time, you're going to be burdened with more and more work. So what is important in that situation is that you plan your time accordingly. Like if you go to work, you plan your time, initially when I go into office, or when you're sitting at home working. So what you can do is you can plan out your time, that take 5 to 10 minutes to see whatever work is there for you, and what is what is the part of the work which has to be done immediately, what needs to be done in the next 1 to 2 days, and what can be done in 1 week. So depending on that, finish up the most the urgent work earliest, and then plan your time accordingly. So if you can manage your time properly, a lot of your stress levels will come down. Now, about the other part is that it may be that you are facing challenges both at work and at home. What is important in that situation is, you leave your work at the workplace, come back home, and manage time accordingly. So this will help manage your time effectively, and also have some time for recreation, which will be a stress buster for you. So in that case, managing your time effectively, managing a balance between work and home, and also having time for leisure will help you balance your life. I think that helps you. I hope that helps you with the question. So
Dr. Ananya,
I think,
Dr. Ananya, before
please.
we break up, there is a question that has been asked by an ex-patient of ours. I will not name the person or disclose the identity for the sakes of confidentiality. The question is very simple. She asks that while one is facing stress, whom to reach out to first, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a neurologist? So can you please answer this question for the person concerned?
What I would first suggest is that in that situation, the first thing which I would suggest is that you talk to a friend or a family. If that doesn't work, you talk to a psychologist first, and who I would think will be able to manage most of your issues. In case the psychologist feels that you need the help of a psychiatrist, he or she will definitely guide you through. At this point, I don't think the neurologist needs to be bothered, would be the right person for your problem.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ananya.
So how much? I don't think we have much time. We have a lot of questions. Kindly keep posting your questions, and we will reply to all of them. We'll either post it on Facebook if you have put it on Facebook, or if you have posted it on the webinar. If we have your mail ID, we're going to answer to each of them individually. So do we have time to answer another quick question?
We sure do have time, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll take up a few more. And in the meantime, please feel free to respond to the poll questions. Okay, this is a question which is very common and very important. I see my professional and family life getting disturbed during this continuous work from home and lockdown. How to handle the situation? Namrata, if you would. Please switch on your microphone, please.
Right. now everybody can hear me. So this is one situation that we we all of us would have faced or would have been facing in real life as well. Even before the lockdown, we must have been facing, and all of us would have been gone through this situation once in our lifetime. So creating a work-life balance is very important. So our work is important, and our leisure is also important. So it is very important that amid work you also find time to relax, and designating time for each of the activity is very important, especially if you are working from home. This doesn't mean that you have all the leisure, and this also doesn't mean that you turn into a workaholic person. So it's very important that you take regular break in the meantime. It's very important that you find time to relax. It's very important that you engage yourself into new hobbies and developing a new skill. You connect with your friends, with your relative, and find some time to de-stress yourself. So what I mean to say that designating a time is very important. Like you designate some time to work, and then you designate some time for yourself. Thank you. Hello, Dr. Ananya.
Yeah, thank you. I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
So this question I would ask Dr. Panwar to answer. I am already on medication of depression. Now I am feeling symptoms are increasing, staying alone. How to manage myself?
Hello. Yeah. So again, this is a very common situation we are seeing, and as I discussed during my presentation, that worsening of symptoms in patients who had the diagnosis was anticipated. So I would recommend that talk to your family members, see what the changes they are seeing, talk to your psychiatrist or psychologist, and see if you need a change in medicine, like dose wise, because we all know that stress can worsen mental health situation. So during this time, especially, as I said during the presentation, also we need to be in close contact with the clinic. We need to be close contact with a psychologist, psychiatrist. And I understand it's difficult to go out. We have a PsyCare app, which you can easily download and seek help. I hope I answered the question.
Coming back to the poll, I think, if people have answered the poll, I would request Manish to please tell us if there are any important results of the poll which could help us.
So while having a look at the poll, a lot of people have answered. And one question that we asked was, has the COVID-19 outbreak, lockdown, or work from home increased the level of stress or anxiety in your life? And 65% of people have said yes, it has. So could you throw a little light on this, Dr. Ananya?
So, the purpose for this presentation was to highlight the changes which has happened to us as a result of the pandemic and also because of the lockdown. Obviously, this has resulted in new circumstances which has put us in a new situation, and obviously that is stressful. So, as we had suspected, a lot of people are feeling stressed because of various reasons, and also a lot of these people who are feeling stressed can benefit from a little bit of adjustments in their life and following few of the tips which we have advised them. In case, even in spite of doing all those things, in spite of trying to maintain that balance, in spite of working and giving time for pleasure and connecting with your loved one, you still feel very stressed and disturbed. In that case, you definitely need to ask for help. It may not be that everybody needs medical attention, it may be just counseling. And so it's important that you ask for help. Also, what is important is I would also ask Dr. Vikram to please highlight on what are the signs of anxiety and what are the signs of depression, so that people can know and identify them.
So first, I would like to start with, like, during this period, we all have sometimes go through like low mood and feeling down. Most important thing is, if you are having this low mood, feeling worthless for few days, along with like change, as I discussed in my slides, like change in sleep, change in appetite, your friends, co-workers or relatives feel that there is a change in personality. All this needs to be looked into. Seek professional help. This may be depression setting in. As I said, like during this time again, or any pandemic or natural disaster, there is always fear of losing control and fear of what will happen in future, and that all can lead to anxiety. So anxiety is good to a point that it helps you to deal with the stressor. But when it becomes too much, by too much I mean it is impacting your work, it is causing physical symptoms, it is causing you not able to concentrate, not letting you be who you are. That can be all pathological anxiety. And during this time, you need to talk to a mental health provider or even your primary care physician, who can guide you and tell you the right way how to deal with it. And especially to look for is if you're having self-harming thoughts. And these thoughts can also be in the form of what we call passive suicidal ideation, where you don't have a plan, but you feel life is not worth living, I should end, there's so much of financial stress. Talk to us, talk to your counselors, talk to your psychologist, and it will help with to cope with the anxiety and cope with stressors. Thank you, Dr.
And there are quite a few questions that we still have, but I think how much time do we have now?
We basically had scheduled this webinar for an hour, and probably a lot of our attendees might have scheduled the time accordingly, and they may have other work to do. So if we can try and wind this off by another few minutes.
Okay. So what we'll do is that we'll address a few more queries, and the rest we can obviously respond individually. So there is a question which I would like Dr. Ranveer to answer. They mentioned that, can you give some tips for identifying triggers? This is the question that we have.
Ma'am, what sort of triggers are being asked about? Is it for the stress or is it for depression? What sort of triggers?
This is the question. So we can presume that the person may mean that I'm presuming that the person.
I'll answer it in general. Yes, I'll answer it in general.
That any trigger which leads to maybe anxiety or distress, how to identify these triggers. Yeah.
So, trigger could very well be identified through a dysfunction. Sleep can be one of the triggers. If there is a change in the sleeping pattern, if it is increased or decreased, if you say you're regularly sleeping between 6 to 8 hours and you find yourself sleeping for 4 hours, that means there is something that your body is telling you is not right. So that could be a trigger. It should not be something which should be laughed about. It should be something which should be taken seriously and spoken about. Like we said earlier, if there is stress, then the first source could be either a GP or going to a clinical psychologist and talking about it. Then there could be a change in eating habits. If you are eating more, if you are eating less, there is something called as stress eating patterns. Okay? So if you see yourself eating less or more, then consider that as a trigger. And trigger cannot be something that happens standalone one day. It has to be repetitive. Watch it for over 2 weeks or so before you even decide that this is one of the triggers which is leading to the current situation at hand. Usually you will find overlapping triggers, and you will find more than one trigger leading to a certain conclusion. Okay. Absent-mindedness could be a trigger. You are unable to focus. You are sitting at work, but your mind is somewhere else, your heart is somewhere else. You suddenly need to come back to what you are doing. That could be a trigger that something is bothering your mind, something that is leading to a certain direction in from which you need to stop yourself. Being unattentive, being uh, less focused, being everywhere. Okay, that means you are trying to juggle too many balls at the same time. You are trying to do too many things due to lack of efficiency. These things could be triggers. Okay, uh, on the emotional side, you will find yourself laughing less, being more negative, pessimistic. These could be triggers. So you need to look into it. And if you find these triggers, one or more of them, then you need to seek help. Back to Dr. Ananya. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll take one last question, and that is to Namrata. How to limit screen time? So, can you please give some points about how to manage screen time for everyone, not just children, but for everyone?
Right. So this is a very important question, and I had just had a discussion about it in my talk. So for children and for adults also, having a routine is very much important, right? So I always lay a lot of emphasis in having a structured day. Having a structured day means you wake up on a time, you find time for exercising, yoga, meditation, you have your meals on time, and you spend time in learning, acquiring new skills, you spend some time on hobbies, you spend some time on playing board games and interacting with family, getting back in touch with old friends and with relatives, right? And if we are keeping ourselves busy in all these activities along with working and finding a fixed time of studying for children, we will find that we actually don't have a lot of time left for to be spent on screen, or to be spent on mobile, or to be spent on TV, right? So it's very important that you have a structured routine and designate specific time for everything, and you find out, you list out, you have a list of activities ready for the day, and you specify the timings for that. And in that timing, you also give some time to screen, you restrict your uses of mobile phone, uses of TV, and then you also find time for other activities which will enhance a good lifestyle and positivity. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, Namrata. The other thing which I would mention to the parents is that besides the time that the children spent on screen, what is also important is what they are spending time on. What is it that they're watching on screen?
Exactly.
What is important is that when they are using the screen, there should be a designated area where they are using the screen. I mean, if they're using the computer, it should be an area where the parents can supervise. If you're talking about teenagers or youngsters, the door may be opened, not bolted, but it may be accessible. Second thing, that most of the either the gadgets nowadays or the social media platforms, they have parental control, parental guidance, so parents can block out those things which they don't want their kids to watch, or they can time it also, that this is the amount of time they can spend it on, and they can stop other people, random people, from communicating their children, so that they are not preyed on the social media. So these are the things which parent can use to manage not only the time but also what their children are using over the net. So coming, yeah.
Before we say thank you, ma'am, I like to make a small comment. Get a lot of
Sure,
calls, phone calls from families and patients not being able to reach us, not because we are distant apart, I'll request all the family members, all the patients who are listening to us today, right now, please download the app. You can reach us. You can reach me directly through it. You don't need to worry. All the team members of PsyCare are available at just a push of a button through the app. Thank you so much, ma'am.
So to summarize, let's put it this way, that these are difficult times, but we have to realize that we have a great ability to adjust and adapt. Also, we need to view the opportunities that this situation has provided us with. Now, children are now having classes online. Parents can work from home. Telemedicine and teleconsultation with doctors in India is a reality today. And on a lighter note, many of us have discovered hidden talent like cooking, dancing, and whatnot. And we also have realized that we have great patience as we have survived the lockdown period. So I hope through this webinar, we have addressed few of the issues bothering all of us. And thank you all for attending. Thank you so much.